All right. Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you to Little Leaves and wishing you a very happy and meaningful new year. I'm truly glad you are here with us today. And this is a new news that I want to share. I'm really very excited that this webinar is part of a very beautiful collaboration with Sarasota University, USA. So participants attending this session through the Little Leaps platform will receive a free professional development participation certificate. If you would like to receive the e-certificate, please reach out to me and I'll guide you through the simple process. Let me give you a brief about Sarasota University. Sarasota University is a Montessori-focused institution dedicated to adult learning, professional growth, and research-based education, offering programs ranging from professional development to advanced degrees. So you can visit their website and explore and see if you can, if you're willing to take up some of their courses. I'm really grateful to Sarasota University for their support in recognizing learning process like ours. And now, let me introduce you to our guest speaker for today, Neha Vaze. Neha is the head of school at Montessori School in the USA, with over 15 years of experience working with children, parents, and educators. Her work beautifully bridges home and school, combining Montessori principles with practical, real life strategies to support everyday conversations with young children. So, Neha, I'm really delighted to have you with us today. I know that you have a presentation to share with us, but before you proceed, I would like you to share your journey this far and how you delved into this world of Montessori.
Sure. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Madhuri, for having me on your program. I'm very excited to be here. And as Madhuri said, I am a head of school at the Montessori Children's School. We're in Hanover, New Hampshire, which is in the northeast of the United States. And I've been at the school for 10 years. I was a teacher there. I became head of school and was head of school through the pandemic, during which I started working a bit more with families in the school just because we were all going through something that, you know, was new to the whole world. And before that, I actually worked with older children. I worked with 13 and 14-year-olds in the classroom. And my journey in education started with the older age. And what I saw was by 13 or 14, there were many thought processes or many ideas about school and the world that were already set. So my kind of goal was I came lower in the ages to work with 3 to 6 year olds because I feel like that is really the age where we can help them create a positive attitude towards school, positive relationships with their parents and with their friends, and really help guide them to have ideas about the world that we would like for them to have throughout their life. So I started in Montessori. Didn't have a Montessori background, but once I stepped into the classroom, it was magical. It was just seeing the children be independent, solving, social emotional problems on their own, being able to communicate with each other and with teachers. And I was joking with Madhuri earlier that I thought I knew everything about children, and then I had two of my own. And then that was very eye-opening because I think everything that we do as teachers and educators in the classroom doesn't always translate at home with our own children. And that is where this topic of today's presentation started taking form, is that I said, so many parents come to me saying, "Oh, I wish my child behaved like that at home." And while I always say, that can't be guaranteed, I started thinking about, well, how can we take some of those lessons that we do as teachers in the classroom and have them as lessons at home? And so that's where kind of the kernel of this today's topic started, is the idea that, how can we replicate what's happening in the Montessori classroom in home with the relationship of parents and children. It's not the same as a Montessori classroom, nor will it ever be. We have a very different relationship with our children, but I would like to focus today on some of the things that I've seen work in the classroom, some of the things that I've worked at home with my children with, and really hoping that everyone walks away with some, practical strategies that they can start at home. So I am going to share my presentation and go from there. Let's see.
I'll remove my pin so it will be
Okay,
easy.
great. So plans and strategies for everyday conversations. And so the real focus of my work is intentional teaching. And I started thinking about what we do at home with our children and all of us as parents, and we do this already with so many different things. We already do this with potty training, teaching them to eat independently, to dress independently. And as they get older, we may be teaching them skills like how to ride a bike. We do this very step by step, and we do this very intentionally. We're there to support them and then eventually take away that support when they're doing things on their own. And I started thinking about, well, why don't we do this with emotions, behaviors, social expectations, conflicts with friends, and some of those things I think all parents do once the problem has arisen. But there are some lessons that I think that every child can have even before any kind of dysregulation happens or any kind of, I think I call them tricky situations in my presentation. So, what can we do beforehand with the children to kind of set them up for success? So that's kind of where I'm coming from for this presentation. And what I've done is I've broken up the topics into kind of very big picture topics, and then I'll go through some examples of my own experiences implementing those topics. So, in my mind, there are three different kinds of conversations or situations that we have with our children. The first part, I call them routine, how was school? Let's get ready for dinner. What do you want for a snack? The younger the child, the more immediate our conversations are. It's very much, we need to put on our shoes to go out, or we need to now leave the playground. And as they get older, they may become much more something about what's happening tomorrow or something that happened yesterday. The next section is what I call known tricky situations. We all know our children and we know some of the things that they might have trouble with when they go through their daily routine. It may be transitions from one place to another. It may be separation from parents. It may be at a certain age and a certain stage, it may be conflict with friends. So these are the things that we know that our child is working on. And, that's kind of the known part. There are always also unknown situations that come up. And that's kind of hopefully the smallest part of our life with our children. But there might be some place where we are not at all expecting a big emotion, and a big emotion happens, and it just kind of takes us off guard. Like, oh, everything was going well. I wonder what's happening. So the idea is that we kind of do the back work. We do the everyday conversations are what help us through the next two categories. So I almost think of it as a upside down pyramid. So the bulk of the work is done in that routines. It's done in that routine conversations. And those conversations actually help set the child up for success when they're having any kind of big emotion or dysregulation. It also helps us saying, oh, actually, I've had this conversation with you before. Remember what we talked about? So having done the pre-work hopefully helps for a more peaceful, resolution any kind of tricky situation that's happening, either known or unknown. So the first big topic that I had, and this actually came from many of the questions that people submitted, which was great. I moved this to the front because it's a big one, is emotions. And this was a few years ago when my children were younger. They're 6 and 10 now, so this was when they were much younger. I started thinking about the work that we do in our Montessori school around emotions and how can we do that work at home as well. And really, if your child is 3, 3.5, and 4, starting here is a great place to start. However, if your child is older, that this is still a great place to start because making sure that they know what the emotions are. And most children, if you ask them, happy and sad is where they if you ask them how they're feeling, that is their first place to go to. But making sure they know that, sadness may be anxiety or it may be frustration. There's also anger. And for parents, I think when you're reading a book with a child or you're looking at different pictures, this is a great, like very informal, and it doesn't have to be serious, but asking those questions like, what do you think that person is feeling right now? Oh, look at their face. They look like they're angry. And if it's part of a story, you can ask more questions like, why do you think they're feeling angry? And it's building in lessons where it doesn't feel like you're giving them a lesson, you're just reading a book with your child. For those slightly older children who may, be watching child-friendly shows on TV, a parent can sit and do that with them there as well, like go along with the story, oh, he looks like he's sad. Why do you think he's sad right now? And starting with you naming the emotion, but then maybe making sure that they are also naming all the emotions. I know there were some questions about children having trouble with specific emotions, and I think focusing on those is great as well. But focusing on them, removed from any time where the child is feeling that emotion. So it's a fun time that you're spending with your child. They're not sad or happy, overly happy. It's just a neutral time. But that's when they start thinking about like, oh, that is what anger looks like. That is what an angry face looks like. And I used to play this game with my children to just practice making faces for different emotions. And it's a fun, very kind of almost silly thing to do. But then it also helps the children understand what the emotion looks like in someone else's face. Like this is my angry face or this is my grumpy face. There's a guess the emotion. I wonder what she's feeling right now, or I wonder what I'm feeling right now. Can you guess what I'm feeling right now? And for people or for children who maybe feel a certain emotion pretty intensely, and I'm thinking specifically of sometimes sadness, anger, or being nervous about something. I have done this in school many times as well, but you start thinking about or talking through what that emotion feels like in your body. So it's not just your face, but sometimes when I'm angry, my heart's beating very fast, or I feel like clenching my fists. It helps children not just name the emotion, but also normalize it a bit. So they're not scared of what they're feeling, because especially a young child, if it's anger, say, they might be a little scared. They don't know what's going on with their body. So helping them understand that it's very normal. We all feel it. The My son, who, he's 10 now, but when he was much younger, one day I was talking to my spouse about something, and I said, I was very frustrated at work today. And he heard me and he came up to me and said, grown-ups get frustrated? And I said, oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. But for him, he thought, this was a magical thing that when you became older, you don't get frustrated anymore. But to understand that emotion stays with you, throughout your life, and then you have to figure out ways to cope with it is very important. And we joke about it now because I said, yes, grown-ups get angry as well, and we sometimes feel sad, and but children need to know that, and so that's why you say, this is a feeling that you may feel throughout your life, um, and this is some of the things that we can do about it. There was a question about empathy, and I think it was a great question. And it's how we can build empathy in our children. And there are two things that I would like to say about empathy. Having worked with children at school, with peers, I see 3-year-olds, very young children, show so much empathy towards one another. It's something that is there in all children, and it comes out when there's a friend who's sad or when there's a friend who's, crying in the classroom. You immediately see that these children are also feeling it. And in the classroom, we give them words of, if someone's feeling sad, you can go up to them and say, are you sad? Is there something I can do to help? Would you like a hug? Can I make you a drawing? Giving them various ways to express their empathy. And so children do have a lot of empathy. What is tricky about that is when they are asked to show that empathy towards a parent. For them, the relationship with the parent is very different. And so it takes a little bit of practice for them to understand that, you know, your parent is there to love you, to take care of you, to make sure you're safe. But, as a family, we can do that for one another. And so you can start showing empathy towards me. Also, I think that is a switch that many children have to kind of make in their heads. To get to that stage, I think doing all the steps that come before is making sure they know all the emotions, making sure they can recognize, the emotion on your face, and then teaching them the words of, oh, you look a little sad. Is there something I can how do to help? And it's I've gotten to, with my children, I do a lot of, especially when they were younger and they think I was being silly when I was actually getting a bit frustrated with them. I would say, look at my face. Do I look like we're joking around right now, or, I'm trying to be funny? So we worked a lot on that. So empathy towards parents is kind of in my mind, one of the later steps that happens, but it's very much feasible. Having done kind of all the other works around emotion. I'd also want to say that, children go through different stages. So sometimes you may say, we've done a lot of books on emotion. We've done a lot of books on, you know, what people are feeling, talking through it, and it may be that they've entered a different stage where they feel a bit angrier at situations, or they're frustrated for some reason or another, and it may require some going back and doing the same work again, depending on how old your child is and what they're going through. Um, the next topic I had was establishing boundaries. And it's a very broad topic in that in my mind, it involves, making sure they're following directions, making sure they're using their, the being safe in their environment. If you give them a new direction, are they listening and following through? And the everyday conversation that I would have. If I noticed that, a child is maybe it's taking him or her a few times before they're able to kind of listen and process and do what I am asking them to do, even with a few kind of reminders, I might have that conversation of, hey, I've noticed it takes me, 3 or 4 times to remind you to put your shoes on, that we're ready to go outside. And once again, this happens at a very kind of neutral moment where it hasn't just happened. I'm not going to immediately ask them to do something. It's just maybe at dinner time or sometime where you're both, there's nothing immediate to do, that you're having this conversation. And at that point, it's kind of connects back to emotions. You can express how you feel, or you can share a story of, I think, how would you feel if you were asking me for something and then I wasn't listening to you, or I walked away, or I didn't do what you wanted me to do? That actually makes me feel a bit frustrated. And this is a great time to say, especially if it's a particular situation that you are having trouble with repeatedly with your child, is to set expectations. I'm going to give you two warnings, and then this is what's going to happen. I'm going to ask you to put your shoes on because we're going to leave in 5 minutes. Then maybe ask you one more time, and then if you still haven't done it, I'm actually going to put your shoes on for you. There is that stage where children really want to do everything by themselves, and so the kind of consequence of I'm going to do it for you is enough for them to say, wait, nope, I'll just do it myself. And I see this in my school a lot, saying, I've given you the option now. Now it's my turn to do it, and then they're immediately, I'll put on my jacket. I'm like, okay. And the other part of that is making sure that the directions you give are very clear. We're leaving in 5 minutes. Sometimes that does a child doesn't know what that means. But saying, you have to put your shoes and jacket on in 5 minutes. Very clear action steps for them. For younger children, and this was a game changer for me, especially when I was parenting my first child, is to wait. It takes a long time for the directions to come into the mind, for them to process them, for them to, while they're doing something else. So waiting a good 5 seconds before you expect anything is a very good idea. I think as adults, we're so used to communicating with each other where we say something, the other person immediately understands, we move on. But with a younger child, waiting. And then the last step is that if they're, very much having trouble following through or even paying attention to you, getting down on your knees, holding their hands and repeating it while looking at their eyes. This is where you can bring it back to your previous conversation that you've had, the everyday conversation of saying, remember we talked about this. I'm going to give you two warnings and then I'm going to put your shoes on for you. But really making sure you're holding their hands and looking at them so that there's no, you're minimizing all the other things that they can do and think about. Because often, very often, they're not trying to be defiant when they're doing this. Their brain is somewhere else. They're thinking about, the toy they're playing with. And they don't even know that you're talking to them, which seems as, disrespectful to us or defiant to us, but it's really not. It's making sure that the information is going into their heads, their brains. Let's see. This is something that I practiced a lot at my school, and it was kind of eye-opening for me to realize that doing this at home is actually doing a huge service to my child. The idea that, at school there's two or three adults and there's 20 children. And so they learn to be patient and they learn to wait. And then at home, the idea is that when your child comes to you asking for attention or asking you to do something with them, we feel, we sometimes may feel that we have to drop everything that we're doing and pay attention to our child. And that may be the case for many, many instances. At the same time, teaching them that, your time is also valuable. They may have to wait. You're very excited to see what they're going to show you. But if I have something in my hands, I'm going to have to finish that before I can come see. The kind of everyday conversation that we have in my house around that is just being very intentional and very clear about, I can't pay attention to you right now. I am doing this, but give me 4 minutes. And I'm always very precise in my times, give me 6 minutes so that they know that there is an end to it. And I'm going to finish it, then I'm going to pay my 100% attention to them. I do this at school, and sometimes if children are getting impatient, I explain to them, when I'm paying attention to you, I want to pay my whole body's attention. active listening. I'm looking at you. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not giving you half my attention. So that when you have to show me, even if it is that beautiful rock that you found on the playground and you cannot wait to share it, I am there listening to you. It teaches them patience, asking them to wait. It is a very hard lesson. It is a lesson that children struggle with for many years, even as they get older. But it is an important one because, in my mind, our children are the center of our universe very much. We would like to give them, all the attention that we can. Working as a family, that's not always feasible. You also have to get other things done in the house that need to get done. If you have more than one child in the house, that's trickier because you do actually then have to balance the attention. And teaching them that, we work together as a whole, as a system, and we give each other time when it's needed. I was talking to a teacher at my school earlier this week, and we both had the same example of during evenings when you are hoping to get dinner ready. That is usually the time when all the children everywhere want your attention, and balancing how you're also trying to make sure the food is ready on time because that's something they need as well, with them wanting you to play with their toys at the same time. And then they're very young. I remember having toys in my kitchen, so they're at least in the same room as me. Eventually, we got to a system where I said, well, once I'm done with this, I can come play with you for 5 minutes before dinner. But having them sometimes be upset about it and teaching them that that's okay. What I'm doing right now is actually for you as well. I'm trying to prepare food for you. So it is a very, very good lesson for children to learn, is just waiting. And the last thing I said is to help model what paying attention looks like. I was having a conversation with a parent at the school about technology use and how so much of, our world is sometimes looking at our phones, whether it's something important or something not important. But being kind of intentional about, if it's not important, showing them, my phone is away and now I'm paying attention to you. You don't have to say all of these things, but just the motions of it. Or the reality of many parents' world is that you do have to send that email on your phone, and you have to do it at a time that's not convenient. But once again, being intentional, saying, I have 2 minutes where I have to do something, then I'm going to put my phone away or put my computer away, and I'm going to be with you. I think this is one of the biggest kind of lessons that we can teach our children. It's one of the biggest gifts we can give our children, is teaching them patience. The next one, this is if you have a Montessori background and you're a Montessori educator, this is kind of a big one that we teach at school. It's trickier for parents to do because we would love to jump to validating our child, seeing a beautiful piece of art they've done and saying, oh, that's so beautiful, I love it. And as a parent, I still struggle with not doing that every single time, but I do like to always add on that, do you like it? You're flipping the question. They'll bring a painting or they'll bring something they've drawn. Mom, do you like this? I drew it. I said, wow, that looks like it took a lot of hard work. Do you like it? How does that make you feel? That now that you're done with this, this is a great place to teach that word proud, because many children will say, I feel happy that I'm done. I said, oh, yeah, I would feel very proud when I'm finished something that took me a while, or, it was very, needed a lot of skill. You can also describe it, have them describe their favorite part, but really teaching them that they need to be proud of their own work. And the validation doesn't always come from the adult, the teacher, the parent, but having them start thinking about their own progress and being proud of their own work. This is some of my favorite lessons at school because you do see children eventually come and say, I made this today, and this is my favorite part. It took a really long time to color this in, and they start kind of using that or showing internal validation that they're saying, I am proud of my work. And that is a very good feeling when you see that happen for your own children. Let's see. Oh, so I had the next section was just known tricky situations. And I, interestingly enough, we had a very good example of this just last night. It was not part of my presentation, but this happened at dinner yesterday. And the first part is very much knowing what your child has trouble with. And we talked about this a bit before, but when you have children, you know what it is that they kind of struggle with during their day, or when they're starting something new, um, whether it's a friend situation that's happening, and we'll get into kind of conflict resolution in a bit. But we were talking about being nervous about different kinds of things. And to be very real, I was talking about how I'm very nervous and excited about this presentation. And my daughter immediately, as I said, I'm nervous about something, she said, oh, I'm nervous about something too. And me saying it kind of helped her say, like, realize like it's okay to admit that this is happening. And she's starting a new activity today. It's a new sport that she's never done before. And we had a conversation about what it is she's nervous about. So we decided to make a list of everything she knows is going to happen during the event and everything that she doesn't know. And it's the doesn't know that's making her very nervous. And this was, yesterday during dinner. It was a very neutral time. It wasn't until the next day, but it was part of our kind of daily conversation and talking about, oh, it's the things we don't know that make us nervous, isn't it? Because that's the part that we don't know what will be expected of us. And so that was my pre-conversation yesterday with her is just what do we not know? And I was able to answer some of the questions that she had about what she didn't know. And she goes, oh, well, I think I'm feeling a little less nervous, but it's still there. And I said, well, that's okay. You're not going to get rid of all of it before then, but you've told me, we've talked about it. We'll talk about it again before the activity. Um, Depending on what it is for your child during the activity or right before it, you can also give multiple reminders. If it's about where you're going to be, I'm going to drop you off at school and then I'll come pick you up right after you play outside. Just multiple reminders about it. This is the last part is something that's very key is that once again, in a very neutral moment, you can recap the event with your child and say, what was your favorite part about that? What was your least favorite part? What are you still nervous about the next time you're going to be doing it? So, having them think through what got better or what stayed the same. And these are some of the examples that they're obviously for slightly older children, but I think for younger children, you can also go through, if it is a new event or a new school, you can walk through everything that's going to happen. You can do it slightly closer to when the actual event is going to happen because that's how younger children process things is, right before going, we're going to meet your teacher. His name is XYZ, and this is what you're going to do there. So just talking through it and saying, how are you feeling about it? Once again, if this is something that you know that your child kind of has trouble with. This is, in my mind, it's something that all children face, and it is a tricky situation. But this is probably one of the most important lessons that you can teach your child. And it's teaching them the power of their own voice. I wrote this and then kind of laughed because sometimes they know the power of their own voice in their house, and that's not something you need to teach them. But when they are with their friends or when they're with in public, it is very, very important to teach them that if there's something happening around them that they don't like, there's two steps. And, if there are people from my school or teachers from my school, you know that these are the two steps that we use at school is saying stop. For very young children, just saying stop and using your hand is very important. As they get older, I always say, like, be more detailed about what you're saying to stop. Can you please stop making that noise near my body? If there's someone yelling near them or something. So being detailed communicates to the other child or the other person that this is what you want them to stop. And then if they're in a situation where the other child does not take that friendly reminder, they can go find an adult. And these are steps that I actually went over with my children at home as well, just part of as they became more social, as they became spent more time with their friends, and if there was ever something that they saw that they didn't like, they can always use their voice. It's something that I think stays with them for their whole life, and I think is very powerful. Is that when you're in a situation where you don't like what's happening, you can actually ask people to stop. We and you know when we think about this situation, oftentimes we think about negative things, but in our school, we have situations where it's between friends, and one friend, the way they express their love for their friend is to give hugs or to, be very physical. And that's not what every child likes either. So it's sometimes it's expressing love that you want to say, stop, please don't touch my body, and you have to tell the other person, I know you love your friend very much, but look at their face. They don't really want a hug right now. Is there some other way that you can express your love for them? So I always like to include that positive kind of example so that we don't think of just this happening in negative situations. Um, the next example, this is actually for those of you who have kind of may know a little bit about positive discipline. This is very much from like the positive discipline handbook, is conflict resolution. We do these steps at school almost daily, but this is something that I started doing at home a lot as well. And have, having two children, and obviously with siblings, as you can imagine, there's all the things that happen with siblings all the time. When we are in the middle of something and we hear there's a conflict brewing with children, oftentimes we're busy and we just want to say, just give her that toy and let's move on. And that, you know, sometimes that's really what's needed to happen. But other times, especially as one sibling gets older, the conflicts become a bit more nuanced, or they're a bit more, there's background to it. You don't really know, where both people are coming from. So if you see something that this is a tricky situation that your children are going through repeatedly, I think going through these steps is very powerful. It's just having everyone sit down. And it seems small, but if your siblings are not close in age, the size actually makes a difference. It's a power play by the older sibling. Sometimes we use it at school. Everyone sit down so that even the teacher, where we live, we're all sitting in the snow sometimes outside having this conversation. Both people present their side of the story, and this for younger children, it's much more adult led. As they become older, you'll see that it can be more child led. The most kind of common conflict that this in our school that happens actually is we have shovels outside that's used for digging. someone takes a shovel that someone else is using. And it seems very minor, but it's a very big deal for both children. And so we talk about, I was still using that. I just put it down to do something else. And the other child say, well, I didn't know you were using it, so I just took it. And, in the beginning, we may help them come up with a solution and say, I think this person was still using it. Maybe they can finish it and then give it to you, and then tell the other person, well, if you put it down, it's kind of tricky because nobody knows you are using it. We have seen as at 3, the resolution is very adult led. By the time they are 5, they will know, they will come ask an adult to be present, but they will sit down on their own and start this conversation of, this is what was happening. I was using this, and then you took it, but can I just use it for 5 more minutes and then I'll give it to you? But to see 5-year-olds have that conversation almost independently, it's so empowering. It's so, you're like, I am teaching them how to sit down, listen to the other side, and come up with a solution. I've joked with parents in the past is when I've talked about this, they always say, oh, I wonder if can we give these lessons to adults sometimes? Because that would be a great relearning for some people, maybe just to sit down and listen to the other side. And this happens in my house as well. We've done kind of these steps over and over again. We've gotten to a point now that my children are older. Sometimes I'll hear them from the other room, kind of resolve the conflict, especially if they know that both of them have maybe done something that's not right. They don't actually want me to get involved, and they will find a solution on their own. It's great because eventually then you don't have to be involved in every conflict resolution. It does require a lot of work beforehand, but for me, I always think about, those years of 3, 4, 5, and 6 that's when you do all this heavy lifting, the work, and it pays off, hopefully 10, 15, 20 years down the line, it'll keep paying off. So that's conflict resolution. So this is, I call them the kind of back pocket strategies that you can pull out for when those unknown, tricky situations happen. Once again, the big emotions was kind of on my mind because that's what I see either on the playground or at school or in other social situations. I'll see a child have these big emotions and the parents just kind of taken aback by it, saying, wait, everything was going well. This is not something where I expected a big emotion to happen. And really the two things that I ask in that situation are basic needs met. And by that, I mean, food, sleep, and stimulation. Like, is it overstimulation? Those are the 3 things that I think about for a child. And sometimes it is overstimulation. They've been at a playground for a while and all their senses are working overtime. And so the next step is to remove them to a calm space. Very rarely, if there's a big emotion being displayed in public that's unexpected, is the child going to calm down while being in that situation? I think taking the child to a calmer space, sometimes even, realizing that the social event or the play date is over. It is time to go home and kind of calm our bodies. That's okay. But also, even at 3 and even at 4, having a recap afterwards. It could be the next day. It could be when we are fed and slept and well rested, coming back to saying, that was interesting. I noticed that you were very sad at your friend's house and you like that friend. We were excited to go to their house. I wonder what happened. Even if the child doesn't have an answer to that question, it plants the seed. It gives them the kind of it plants the seed for future conversations, and it helps them realize that this is something that you talk about as a family. I wonder what happened. I wonder what we can do next time to make sure that doesn't happen anymore because that didn't look like it was fun. Um, it, oftentimes with a 3 and 4 year old, they won't know how to explain that, but just naming the emotion once again, and making sure they understand that, they remember that, oh, that doesn't feel that good. I would like to find a solution to how not to feel that way again. Um, uh, Once again, real life example from the past couple of days, an unknown tricky situation was not a big emotion one, but I was telling Madhuri it's seasonably it's milder than it usually is where we live, but it's still pretty cold. And we were on a playground, and I had told my child 5 more minutes and then we were leaving. I told both my children, and one of them heard me, acknowledged. The other one looked at me and ran away and hid. And this was a few days ago, very uncharacteristic. It took me by surprise because she usually doesn't do that. And I was standing with a group of moms who saw it, and we were both wondering, why did she run away and hide? And if I could see that it was a place where I could have gotten frustrated immediately. And I was headed in that direction because it was cold outside. We wanted to get going. And so I gave one more reminder, and same thing. I knew where she was hiding, but it did not come out. So, I walked over there and I told her, hey, it's time to go home. She's immediately said, okay, and walked with me to the car. And I noticed this was something very unusual. There was not listening to me, running away, hiding. So it was unknown. It wasn't, in the bigger scheme of things, it wasn't a huge, tricky situation. It was just unusual behavior. So once we were in the car, we talked about school, how it was. Much later, I said, hey, what happened? It was surprising to me that you ran away and hid when I told you to come home. And she looked at me and said, I didn't hear you. I thought you were coming to chase me and I hid. And as a mom, there's part of me that, you know, is she telling the truth? I don't know. But it could be that she just didn't hear me. And I left it at that. I said, okay, that's fine. Next time I will make sure that you hear me. If it happens again and she doesn't hear me again, we may have to talk about, is that really what's going on? But it was just interesting because this was 2 days ago and it was a very much unexpected behavior from my child that that happened. So, but we did have a recap afterwards and just say, that was odd. Your brother was ready to leave, and we had to wait till you came out of hiding to join us. Um, so this is the last slide I have, and I've said this to many parents as well, and we've talked about this even in my friends group, is that most everyone who's joined today, you've joined here because you want to learn more about working with children. We read books, we watch videos, and then sometimes when it comes down to it, when we're in that situation, we say the wrong thing. And all the learning's there, but when we are working with our own children, our emotions are there as well. And so I always end with give yourself grace. People make mistakes. It's actually a very great opportunity for you to model being imperfect for your children. And that's okay. We want to teach them that lesson that, nobody's perfect. And so how do you apologize? You can just, if there's a situation and you've said something like, I'm going to give all your toys away to the neighbors, as we sometimes say when we reach the last straw. You can later on say, obviously I'm not going to give away all your toys, but I am going to put away that toy that you were misusing earlier. But I didn't mean what I said before. And I think being patient with yourself, that's what I teach myself or tell myself actually often because every, especially if you're a parent, every year that your oldest child becomes that year, it's the first time you're parenting that year. So, you've never had a 6-year-old before, you've never had a 3-year-old before. So we are all learning at all times. So um, I have I enjoy discussing this topic, as you can imagine, and I love hearing about kind of real examples, things that have worked, or what are you working on with your own child. So I've included my email address for people to reach out if there's something you would like to share, something you'd like to talk about more. I also have my blog that I write things about really what's happening in my life and as it happens at school and at home. And it's the Montessori-ish parent is that I am a Montessori teacher, but I'm not always Montessori at home. I am trying to be. So thank you again for having me, Madhuri, and thank you for everyone who has attended. Um, yeah, that was my presentation.
Thank you, Neha. That's a lovely presentation.
Thank
Really
you.
enjoyed it. Um, I was just making few points while we were going through the presentation, and I'll
Yeah,
go backwards. Can you turn off your screen sharing so that we can have
sure.
a conversation? Thank you. So I'll go backwards, like I said. So your slide on standing up for oneself and what you spoke about power for their own voice. It's so powerful and important. And while you were sharing your experience, I mean, suddenly just it clicked me as well because this happened today. Um, I'll start with a little background. When my daughter was around 2.5 or 3 years old, and I remember when uh, we had a neighbor where we had these bachelor girls who were staying,
Okay.
and there was a frequent visit of boys as well, of course, because they were college friends and colleagues,
Yeah.
whoever. And my daughter was pretty fond of those girls. So she would, half the time, she would be in their house eating, feeding, whatever, sleeping as well. And the boys who would come, because they were also frequent visitors, they were also pretty fond of her. But, sometimes when they all are there and I'm not around, of course, she being young, they'll carry her, take her alone in a balcony or somewhere. I would get anxious, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, your protective hood comes in and you want to safeguard your child, and for that what you do is you start saying things to your child, and that's what I did, which I shouldn't have. I still feel that it was too young for her to say that. I told her, if somebody is offering you a chocolate and taking you alone to a place in a corner of a house or somewhere, please don't go with them. And it struck so hard in her psyche that she stopped going to their house completely because, and I kept asking what happened, because there was this guy who came, who carried her and took her to the balcony. I don't know what happened, but I was scared for a long time. I mean, it was around 6 months to 1 year where she just refused to go and interact with even the girls, forget about the boys.
Wow.
Yeah, and there was only one time that I asked what happened, and she said that uncle tried to give me a chocolate. That's it.
Mm.
And those girls would be asking me what exactly happened, why is she behaving this way? We all want her to come. They are asking about her and they want to know where she is. Please, can you send her? And she was just not ready to go there. And at the time, the wise thing I did was I told them that, this happened and I think she needs a little bit of time. So
Yes.
yeah, let's wait, and I think she will get there. And exactly that happened. I think around, yeah, like I said, between 6 to 12 months is when she was completely, she had isolated herself from those people, and then slowly she warmed up again and she became close to them. And when she, started interacting with them, she had her own boundary.
Hmm.
She was very, very firm about not going with anybody unless and until Mama is around, or even if I'm around or not, I will be in this hall area. I'm not going to move anywhere else where other people are also there. So that was her experience. So um, this happened today. We were just walking, and I didn't know about this incident. She was saying that was, I think, 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago, we were traveling to US. So at the airport, at immigration, the person was seeing her passport and saw her picture, and then saw her, and then I think he just touched her cheeks, and
Hmm.
she was sharing this with me today, and I was like, wow, I have no clue of this. And I said, if he did so, you could have stopped him if you didn't like it. And she told me something that surprised me. She said, Mama, you understand when people are touching you with different intention. And I know
Hmm.
that his intention was not bad. So it was fine with me. And I was pretty surprised. So I was just thinking, when you said power of their own voice, I think it comes when you give that freedom to the child. Imagine if I
Hmm.
was forcing my child when she was 3 years old to go and interact with those people, even when she was not willing to. I would have suppressed her inner voice, right? And she wouldn't have
Yes.
had the capability, the ability to have the discernment between what is intentional and unintentional, touch, right?
Yes. Yes.
So I personally feel that parents unknowingly, it's not that they have bad intention, but to have their own dignity, or I don't know, prestige intact, sometimes they force the child to do things against their will, and that suppresses their inner validation, their inner voice. And the more we talk about stand up for yourself, they can stand up for themselves only when they have that freedom, right? Um, as much as parents have good intention, I think they should also be wise enough to understand when to, offer that freedom, and when to keep that, hold of it as well. So that was a very good point that you put across, because very few people have this discussion. So it was a wonderful,
Yes.
it was a great slide, and I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you.
uh, the other thing that, yeah, as you said, patience is indeed a life skill. And in internal validation too, as much as we really want, and like, I mean, I keep sharing this with every educator or parent, these days it's become a very common phrase: good job, wow, amazing, oh, I loved it. I mean, why should the child feel happy about you loving it? The child should first love their work, right? So we can talk about the details of their work rather than validating from, getting the validation from external sources, right? So internal validation is a skill too. That was beautiful. um, One thing that we were sharing, I think you were sharing about the time. You said children do not cannot make the sense of time, right? It's
Yeah.
even more difficult for children who are below 3 years, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we can continue saying, "Oh, I'm coming back in 10 minutes," and you should be done by that time. No sense of time. You come in 5 minutes, you come in 10 minutes, you come in half an hour. For children, it doesn't make any sense. But when we say that I am going to finish this work and come back, that makes a lot of sense to them. So
Yes.
yes, so I yeah, as you said, uh, time works only when it is backed up by a certain, explanation of why you are giving that time, right? So that was one.
Yes.
I mean, why I am highlighting these things is because your slides had really powerful, deep meaning, and it should come out really well. It was beautifully explained and very beautifully done, structured.
Thanks.
Yeah. And your first slide, emotions. I loved your first slide. Um, as you said, empathy comes later, right? Before that, we need to talk about emotions. The child doesn't know various emotions. But again, like I said, just like, we suppress child's power of inner voice, we also highlight, or we also portray that any emotion other than being happy is a bad emotion, and you have to hide it from others, isn't it? When you are angry, oh, why are you angry? I mean, I have seen in various schools where when the child is crying, the educators become so you know They're like, oh, why the child is crying? Happy face, you should have a happy face. Why should they have happy face all the time? Crying is also
That's
an
not practical.
it's not practical. The child has left the parent at the gate and has come in and really wants to go back to the parent, right? You have to understand, you have to empathize. So empathy is a journey when you are understanding their emotions, when you are validating it, and then you are making normalizing it. You are making them feel okay about it, and then they develop the trust with you, isn't it?
Yes.
So
Yes.
yes, it is very beautifully explained that whenever a child has a certain emotions, you can sit together and have a conversation around it, and that builds the journey towards developing that empathy, where the child starts having those kind of conversation as they grow with their peer
Yes.
group, or even with
Yes.
adults, right?
Yes.
So yes, it's a beautiful slide. I loved your explanations,
Oh,
Neha.
thank you so much. Thank you.
So,
It,
yeah, we are open for question and answer. We have 5 minutes, not more than that. So, anyone who would like to ask a question, please unmute yourself, or you can type in your question in the chat box. Um, yeah, uh, anyone? Okay, we have Purnima. She is asking, how do you support children who are silent or reluctant to speak?
yes. And I remember someone actually asked that question beforehand as well. The way I think about children who are maybe having trouble communicating is, first of all, how much of their time is that happening? There's cases of children, it's called selective mutism, where they are not able to speak in certain environments at all, or they're not able to speak until a parent is around. And I think those are kind of, you know, cases in which talking to a professional may be of use. We saw that at our school actually much more frequently post-pandemic, is that there were children who were kind of not used to socializing, so they weren't able to speak at school. The other time that I see that happening often is when a child is feeling a certain emotion, usually, sadness or anger, and they are unable to communicate that when it's happening. The two things that I would like to think about, if that is the case, is really going back to those everyday conversations. That is something that your child is struggling with. If it's talking to you when they're angry, when they're not angry, when you're having a very calm conversation, maybe reading stories about it, talking through it, sharing your own example of, I was feeling this way, but then I talked to so and so and I felt so much better. And really kind of repeating those kind of conversations so that it helps them solidify in their minds, like, this is what someone does when they're angry, or this is what you do when you're sad. The other part of it is that when they're actually in that emotion, I think maybe verbal communication is hard, but one thing that I have, the teachers and I at my school have done successfully is really going back to like yes or no questions. So just asking questions that allow them to maybe shake their head or nod their head. And it gives them kind of, it's that first step towards communication without actually verbal communication, but you're helping them build, you know, ways of showing you what is going on without using words. And that, I think that first step kind of opens the gate of, okay, now we're able to communicate and you're able to kind of, are you feeling angry? Yeah. Would you like a hug? Yes. And then, giving them that support that they're feeling when it is a negative emotion. So those are the two things that come to my mind. I don't know if you have anything to add, Madhuri.
I feel that if a child is silent or reluctant to speak, um, and especially if it is a young child, um, my personal experience says that If a child is silent, there can be two possibilities. Either the child doesn't have enough language to communicate, or maybe the child doesn't speak your language, is why the child is hesitant in speaking. The second thing can be the child is not too confident to open up with you. The child doesn't know you as much or the environment, because each child's temperament is different, right? When
Mhm.
I mean, every individual is different temperamentally. A person in a new place behaves differently, right? And that starts from a very young age. So the child may be temperamentally not really ready to adapt to a new place very soon. So it can be also one of the possibility. Uh,
Absolutely.
Yes. So in both the possibilities, I feel, especially because I'm an early year educator. So in my experience, whenever I have worked with these kind of children, the actions, the communication through eyes and the body works
Mhm.
beautifully, because your intention are reflected through your body language, even if they cannot understand your language, in case, if the child doesn't understand the language, right, and is trying to understand, so your actions can, communicate that my intentions are very much to, welcome you, to allow you to be part of me, to trust me because I trust you, right.
Mhm.
And if the child again is temperamentally not ready and is reluctant to speak, I think it works there also. um, what I see is, if a child is silent and reluctant to speak, again there are two possibilities. The child will do everything, but the child is not going to interact much, or the
Mhm.
child will also try to keep themselves away from you, right? Again, in either cases, I feel we are still successful if we are able to make the child do or be part of the environment, because I have seen children, especially in a toddlers community, staying for an entire year, not speaking at all, but doing
Mhm.
everything, being part of every community, activity. And then the moment they move to 3 to 6 environment, a sudden spurt of, expression.
Communication.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
sudden spurt. And you
Yeah.
will be surprised, this was the child in my environment and what happened suddenly. So I think keeping that faith and trust in the child is the key, and not really feeling that the child is silent and reluctant because the child doesn't like us, or the child is scared, or the child is angry.
Mhm.
Before making any kind of judgment, I personally feel that it's important for us to trust the child, that the child is here to be part of this community, and we have to welcome, because if we don't do it, child is too young to understand, and child is too young to adapt to this place, right, time and
Yes,
space.
absolutely.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Punima. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, okay, Lavina has a question. How do you help a 3-year-old child in a class who is very particular about everything? Should be in the same place, or it should be in the correct place according to him. Change gets him stressed. Oh, yes. Yeah.
I would say that that's developmentally quite appropriate because in a Montessori setting we've seen that most children come in having a very particular way in which they like to do things, and in the classroom, oftentimes everything has a particular spot, so it kind of helps them. It soothes that part of their need is met there. And we have children like that in our school as well who very much need everything from where their shoes go, where their lunchbox goes, in a very particular spot. The way our school is structured is we actually give them time to do all of those things. There's not a lot of rush from one activity to another, or there's not a lot of transitions. So when they come in the morning, we have children who spend a good 10 minutes making sure their space, their cubby is, their jacket and their shoes and their lunchbox is very particular. We give them that time. What I've seen both at school and with my own children is that it is developmental. And for some children, that tendency always stays throughout their life of being very particular. For many children, when they especially enter the second plane of development in Montessori, that need is gone. So, there's rarely a 7, 8, or 9-year-old who would like things to be particular. So I think if that need is there from the child's point of view, we honor that and we let them kind of have the space to do that. We do emphasize that, your things and your belongings you can do. We have some children who would like for all their friends' belongings to also follow a particular pattern. And so we always say, you're in charge of your own things in your own body. So you can do that with your things. Your friend, we will help them if needed, but you're not in charge of how they put their stuff away. But we do give them that space to be that way because I think that is a very internal need for many 3 and 4-year-olds, and they need it to be a certain way before they can move on to doing other things, and that's okay.
Yeah, because as you said, developmentally it is predictable because order gives them sense of security.
Hmm.
If they
Yes,
know where to place what, of course, it doesn't hassle them. It doesn't. I have seen children getting frustrated if things are kept here and there, and for
yes,
younger children even more because they are new in this place, and anything if the places if changed quite often. Already they are new in the space. It confuses them, and that adds to more of their frustration. So
absolutely.
it's important for us. And like I said earlier as well, some children adapt to changes pretty fast, but for some children, temperamentally, it takes time. So understanding the stages and temperaments of these children, we can accordingly work with their needs and requirements.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, Lavina. Yeah. All right then. Lovely to see you all. There are some known faces as well, and I'm really glad to see you here. Um, Thank you for joining us today. Please do reach out to me for the certificate from Sarasota University. And I really thank Neha today to agree to come up for this session and give us a beautiful, elaborate presentation on how to communicate with children positively, but also ensuring keeping right boundaries for the children so that they understand the value of patience, as we discussed, the value of taking turns, waiting for their turns. All that is equally important and part of life skill to become a holistic human being, isn't it? The more we talk about our children is only because we have gone through the journey, like Neha was saying, and we were just having a joke just before the session started that we're handling 20, 30 children in a classroom and handling your one or two child at home, two different things altogether. Yet we are working, being an educator, we are trying to bring that at home as well. And we encourage every family, whether you are an educator or just a parent, we encourage everyone to take one step at a time. And like her last slide mentioned, making mistakes is okay, apologizing is okay, and giving time to yourself is absolutely fine. As much as we want to be role models, making mistakes and apologizing for that is equally important to be that great role model because everything is a part of human being, right? Being human, isn't it, Neha?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Madhuri, and thank you for everyone who attended. It was great discussing this with you.
Yeah. Thank you, and bye bye. You
Thank you.
all have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.